Going on, everyone? John Matrix here. So today we're hopping back into the 40K universe with Mr. Warhammer as our guide. We're taking a look at power weapons today, how they work, etc., etc. We've looked at, power armor, terminator armor. We've looked at bolt weapons. So I figured we'd also look at some power weapons. So I assume we're going to get into, power swords, maybe thunder hammers, which I think are power weapons. Power fists, claws, etc., etc. See how they work. I think they're mostly like attached with Psyker or are imbued with Psyker abilities, I think, but I could be wrong. We're gonna find out. So, as always, links down below in the description to this original video without my commentary and reaction, and to Warhammer's channel. If you would do me a kind favor and go over there and click on those links. Give this video of his a like, check out his channel, see if you like any of his content, give him a sub if you do. Man does a lot of Warhammer 40K content creation, so check out his stuff. If you would like to also, a lot of times I do these reactions live for my YouTube members, and if you would like to join in a lot of the discussions that we have before, during, and after those videos, there is a join button somewhere down below this video. You can click it, see if any of those YouTube membership tiers have any interest for you, and if you'd like to join, feel free to. If not, that's fine as well. Appreciate you guys checking out the video, which we are going to do now. Just jump right on into it here. But boom, volume's good.
The 40K universe is full of crazy and over-the-top weapons, but none quite capture the imagination like the iconic power weapons.
I think isn't the Emperor's flaming sword, isn't that actually a power weapon? The one that Gilliman has, which I guess, from what I understand of it, it's been imbued, with the Emperor's essence, so it's an extremely powerful weapon in and of itself. But it's not able to, I guess, reach its full potential, either because it's not in the Emperor's hands or because it's not in the hands of a Psyker. And being in the hands of a Psyker, it would be able to be utilized better because of, I don't know if it's just because of its power weapon or because, the Emperor was an extremely powerful Psyker and he forged it and imbued his essence into it. But anyway, let's continue.
Whether they take the form of an intricate and ornate blade, bathed in crackling blue energy that can slice through any armor in the galaxy as if it wasn't there. Blunt weapons like hammers, fists, and flails that create mini explosions that can punch straight through a ship's bulkhead or burst apart the wielder's enemy in a violent and gory display of unstoppable force. Or even clawed hand weapons, each bladed finger crackling with lightning and murderous intent, rending steel and flesh with every swing. Power weapons come in hundreds of different forms and have been in use for thousands of years. But what exactly are they and how do they work? In this video, we're going to talk about all this and a lot more. So strap yourself in and let's take a deep dive of power weapons.
So as far as power weapons go, I think there's power axes, swords, daggers, fist weapons, claws. I don't know what else. Hammers, obviously. He mentioned hammers. Other than that, I'm not sure what other types of power weapons there are. Yeah, I would assume he is going to get into all the various types of power weapons and how they're created and their specific uses, or, if they're good, if they're better, I guess I should say, against certain enemy types than others, etc., etc. So anyway, let's continue the video.
But first, a quick shout out to this video's
Shout out to the sponsors.
Today's video is brought to you by Mech Arena, which is a tactical team-based 5v5 shooter with a perfect balance of casual pick-up-and-play fun and skill-based competitive play. Featuring a whole bunch of awesome mechs, each with their own unique abilities and different playstyles.
Some mech games.
The game features a huge variety of weapons to collect and upgrade, and thousands of ways to customize your mechs, including tons of amazing skins, custom paint jobs, and not to mention tons of potential weapon combinations. So you can build a mech that fits your preferred playstyle and personality. Mech Arena features tons of different game modes, including control point capture, some good old-fashioned 5v5 or 2v2 deathmatch, and a bunch of different tournaments. You can play solo or with your friends against other teams from around the world.
So that is an interest for you, obviously check it out.
For Mech Arena. They've got the new Battle Pass season, plus a huge lineup of Oktoberfest events, with some amazing prizes, including a new pilot, Boar. Mech Arena is also going to be adding controller support, which is perfect for those of us who are a bit more competitive, or just hate using touch controls. The game is completely free to play on Android and iOS, and you can use my personal link or scan my QR code on the screen to get a bonus worth $25, which includes one
Augers.
Firelight skin, one Prodigy crate, and one Plasma Cannon 4, which will seriously help kickstart your game. And if you're quick, you can add me to your friends, and maybe we can play some matches together. So don't wait around. Thanks again to Mech Arena for sponsoring this video, and let's get into the Grimdark.
Yeah, there you guys go. Go check out his sponsor. If that game is to kind of interest you, go check it out and give the guy some support. Like I said, he makes a lot of great Warhammer 40K content, so help the brother out.
Like most of the incredible things within the 40K universe, the human version of power weapons can trace their origins back to the dark age of technology, and were created in their greatest abundance when the Imperium was still very young, back when members of the Mechanicus were as much as artisans as they were keepers of secrets. There are very few members of the Adeptus Mechanicus left alive that still have the knowledge and skills necessary to craft new power weapons. Most of the ones in existence have been in service for hundreds, thousands, and in some rare instances, tens of thousands of years.
I mean, that's pretty much how it goes with most things in the 40K universe, right? Most technology is technology that's been pieced together and they don't really understand how it works. And yeah, most people that are alive, or there's only necessarily maybe a handful of people alive that actually know how to do or create a lot of these things.
Although the people that are still able to make such weaponry are incredibly rare, the more prominent reason we don't see higher levels of production of them is the investment it takes to create a single one.
Yeah, I would assume also it would just be cheaper to make, you know, like as far as mass producing goes, it must be cheaper to just mass produce these chain swords and chain weapons, you know, chain axis swords, or just, you know, standard mono blades, you know, mononuclear or whatever they're called, you know, swords, et cetera, as opposed to actual power weapons. I don't know what the process is to make a power weapon, but like I said, I thought it has something to do with imbuing it along with imbuing it with psyker powers, you know, during the forging process.
Each power weapon requiring enormous amounts of rare materials to produce. Thus, those materials are often distributed to more practical projects. When a new power sword is created, for example, it is normally for a high-ranking military officer, or someone of enormously high standing and prestige. The weapon itself serving more as a symbol of office.
Exactly.
It is often said of power weapons that they are far more valuable than their wielders. And
that's what I was going to say. It's more of a symbol of status and authority than it is an actual weapon for a lot of these people.
most of them having been in use for centuries or even millennia.
Same with like bolt guns, you know, like there's only so many like typical average humans that are able to use or have bolt guns created for them, because generally speaking, they're heavier and have a lot of kick, and they're mainly made for the Astartes.
Passed on from wielder to wielder. Within the forces of humanity, the Space Marines wield the largest amount of power weapons, though high-ranking Imperial commanders and other such prestigious individuals are known to wield them as well. We see power weapons utilized by members of other human factions, such as the Sisters of Battle, the Custodians, and the Inquisitors, just to name a few. So what makes a power weapon a power weapon? Quite simply, it is a powered version of a more traditional melee weapon. Whether they take the form of a blade, hammer, claw, or any other type of weapon that you can think of. Within the forces of mankind,
I don't think there's any like powered chain weapons though, right? Am I mistaken about that? I don't think I've ever seen like a powered chain sword or axe. You know, if I'm incorrect in that, let me know.
Alone, we see power swords, power axes, fists, lightning claws, flails, scythes, you name it. Theoretically, any melee weapon could be turned into a power weapon if the same technology was applied to it. For this reason, we've seen many different types of power weapons be experimented with over the millennia, some being far more successful than others. For example, the Power Scythe was a power weapon that, although favored by some legions of Space Marines like the Death Guard, was eventually determined to be too clunky and difficult to wield versus a standard power sword, and thus fell out of production. Whatever form a power weapon may take, they all have a few things in common. The most notable is that the energy field that they produce is made to disrupt the molecular structure of whatever they come into contact with. This can be done in a couple of different ways. Most power weapons are activated by thumbing an activation rune built into the weapon's hilt. When initiated, the weapon will be wreathed in a corona of crackling blue energy, going from a seemingly mundane, if not ornate sword, into a terrifying construct of pure lethality. The energy that is produced by a power weapon is what is known as a matter disruption field. This
I And I think specifically, like, they're very effective against, you know, like demons and chaos forces and stuff like that because of the nature of them. I think that Grey Knights specifically use power weapons. I don't think they really use a lot of chain stuff, but maybe I'm mistaken about that.
This means that when the used by a power weapon is what is known as a matter disruption field. This means that when the field comes into contact with matter, the molecular bonds that make up the blade's target become disrupted. The crystalline bonds of metal are what give them their hardness. So when they become broken, the armor is no longer hard at the impact site, and the blade can pass through it as if
Makes
it was
sense.
made of wet paper. It would be like if you were trying to chop down a tree, and the second before your axe makes contact, the wood in the path of the axe turned to mush, allowing you to cleave through the entire trunk in a single swing. This makes power swords some of the sharpest and most feared weapons in the entire.
See, like, would they even need to be sharp at that point in time? Because, like, if it like changes or breaks down the matter around it before the actual impact, do they really need to be, you know, sharp at that point? You know what I mean? Because they just like, anyway.
Galaxy, as they are effective against any type of target, no matter how heavily armored they may be. Blunt force power weapons such as power fists, flails, and hammers work a little bit differently, whereas once the power sword is activated, the energy field is constantly draining. Hammers, on the other hand, continue to store the energy within the head of the weapon until the exact moment that they make contact with sufficient enough force to discharge all of the stored energy at once. This results in a violent explosion at the impact.
So, yeah. One massive kaboom versus, like, very precise cutting. Kind of a difference. I gotcha.
To discharge all of the stored energy at once.
Which, I gotta say, in Darktide, the Thunderhammers, they're my favorite weapon for sure. For sure. There's nothing more satisfying than charging one of those bad boys up and taking out one of the like mini bosses or special enemy units in one hit. Especially like the charger guys. What are they called? I forget what they're called. Like mutants that just charge at you and like slam you and throw you around, man. Having one of those things charge at you and just go bah, knock one of them down as a charging at you. That is like chef's kiss. Most beautiful thing in the world.
This results in a violent explosion at the impact site, many often describing the sound that it makes like the crack of thunder, which is where the Thunderhammer gets its name. The advantage of a power sword is that it offers the wielder a wide degree of flexibility. They offer superb defensive capabilities as well as offensive.
Gotcha.
A skilled swordsman can parry practically any blow that comes his way, while still managing to strike with lethal efficiency.
I would think also, you know, because of the nature of it being a power weapon, it would probably also even have a good chance of breaking the enemy's weapon, as well as just parrying it, you know what I mean? If it's a subpar weapon, it would just break, shatter, whatever. So
when it comes to heavier variations of power weapons like with hammers, their massive weight and awkward balancing can make them unwieldy, and attempting to parry blows with a heavy hammer while locked in combat with a skilled swordsman is pretty impractical.
Power versus finesse.
Blunt force power weapons and axes are often paired with a combat shield.
The old strength versus dex debate, you know what I'm saying?
Or a larger powered variation known as a storm shield. A storm shield is a ridiculously heavy shield, normally wielded by Vanguard veterans or Astartes and Terminator armor. The shield itself employs a gravitic energy field generator that renders all but the most powerful of blows completely ineffective. Shields like this are able to tank direct hits from heavy ranged weaponry like las cannons or even artillery shells, thus making up for the heavy and slow fighting style of a hammer or an axe. Once the charge of a power weapon becomes completely depleted, it can still function as a standard melee weapon. Most swords that have been given the treatment to become a power weapon are incredibly sharp and meticulously designed.
That is interesting that it can lose charge. I assume, obviously, it will recharge itself over time, but I wonder, like, what the process of that is. Is it literally just it takes time to recharge? Or is there some other kind of process that, you know, like, for example, a Psyker, a Grey Knight, you know, does he have to, like, sit there and meditate with the weapon to, like, imbue the psychic power back into it to help it charge or something like that, you know what I mean? Like, I would assume that isn't the case with all power weapons. I would assume that that might be some kind of option, but it isn't the way to go with all power weapons, because not everyone who uses a power weapon is a Psyker. So I would assume that they just, like, probably have to recharge over time. or something like that, or maybe there's some kind of, I don't know if there's like power cells that get put in these weapons as well. I don't know how that works.
Or however meant to become a power weapon are incredibly sharp and meticulously designed. There are, however, some variations of power weapon that do not utilize a blade at all, such as the one wielded by Inquisitor Gregor Eisenhorn, or the energy rapier-like weapon wielded by rogue trader Auspice Corda. They are basically nothing more than an
literally a lightsaber.
Unassuming hilt until activated, their surface area being comprised of energy alone. These bladeless power weapons are possibly the most rare variant that exist, and come with a few pros and cons. The major pro is that since it's nothing more than a hilt, it's far more easy to conceal than a full-length sword. However, if the charge pack becomes completely depleted...
Okay, so charge packed. So there is some kind of power cell that has to be put in these things that would then recharge over time or something like that, I guess. Okay. So it is more of kind of like a standard weapon being imbued with almost kind of like a lightsaber-esque like power with power cells and stuff like that, I guess. I don't know. Interesting. Like I said, I originally thought it was more like they got imbued with some kind of psyker powers or whatever that gave them the power weapon. I didn't know that there was something that like had to recharge and all that kind of stuff. So that I find that is pretty interesting. So obviously in a prolonged fight, when they run out of power, you know, like you said, it can still be used as a standard weapon, but there's not quite as effective, which then also, again, you know, answer the question that I said earlier. It was like, would the swords then, or axes or anything like that, would they actually need to be sharp, being that the power part of it can just, you know, essentially cut through anything anyway? And yes, obviously that would be the case. If they run out of power, they still have to function as a normal weapon, obviously. So
conceal than a full-length sword. However, if the charge pack becomes completely depleted, it ceases to function as a weapon entirely, whereas a standard power sword could still be used in combat.
That would be a problem.
Now, this is me just theorizing here, but I would imagine these weapons were a lot more widespread in a time long since past, as their practicality for assassins or stealth-based operatives is obvious. So at this point, I know what you must be thinking. If a power sword is vastly more usable than the chain swords normally seen in much greater abundance within the Imperium of Man, why were the chain swords not phased out for power swords?
I just think it's, like I said, a mass production thing. Like, it's much easier to create and produce these things en masse, and anyone can use them. You know, other than, I guess, maybe some of the, like, great chain swords that might need to be specifically wielded by someone with the strength and capability of an Astartes, but, like, even a regular guardsman can wield a normal chainsword.
This mostly comes down to cost of implementation, as the energy and resources that can go into making a single power sword could be used instead to make thousands of chainswords.
Right.
Hell, if you really wanted to, you could build your own chainsword today. They are remarkably simple, cost-effective.
I mean, like, literally just take a chainsaw and put a hilt on it, then you have a chainsword. It's not going to cut the same way these things do, but yeah.
And above all else, efficient weaponry. It's much the same reason why the entirety of mankind's forces are not Astartes. For every single Space Marine, there are around 1 million guardsmen. And you can argue that one of these things is vastly more powerful than the other one-on-one, but it makes far more sense to go with quantity over quality, with just how large and spread out the Imperium of Man is, especially when you factor in their limited resources. Aside from hammers and swords, there's a lot of different types of power weapons, each with their pros and cons. So let's take a look at a few of them. The Power Axe combines the matter disruption field of a power sword with the heft and weight of a blunt force power weapon such as a Thunderhammer.
I would think the halberds that the Custodes use, I mean, I don't know specifically why only Custodes are able to wield them. I don't know. You know, that would be something that one of you guys in the comments would have to answer for me, because I haven't like gotten to that bit yet. But I would think a weapon like that, like a power weapon like that, that's also, I believe it's also like a rifle of some sort that's able to like shoot. I would think weapons like that would be more like commonplace, something that gives it a range capability, but also has, you know, the ability to be used as a proficient melee weapon. And it's something that it's a spear, you know, it's a halberd, and you have reach with it. So, but it also just comes down to preference with the wielder and their fighting style, obviously. But I would just think that those would be more widely utilized and created. But what do I know?
They do not have an inherent defensive capability like that of a sword. They're often paired with either a combat shield or a storm shield. The Power Fist, although being a little bit silly, is also an incredibly effective melee weapon. It enhances the user's strength to a ridiculous degree, going far beyond that of the Astartes power armor itself. So it has a wide array of uses on the battlefield that are not directly combat related. However, when the Power Fist is used to strike, it can punch holes in the sides of heavily armored vehicles and
Interesting. So now I guess the question that I would have too is, like, if you have a Power Fist and a power weapon, would they like enhance each other? You know what I mean? Could you, like, the energy that could be generated from a Power Fist, could that transfer into a power sword, axe, halberd, or whatever, and enhance it even further? Or just the momentum and force that could be generated by a Power Fist, would that also enhance the blow? You know what I'm saying? Could you, like, do a combo maneuver here between the two? I would think so, but I don't know.
When the Power Fist is used to strike, it can punch holes in the sides of heavily armored vehicles and unleash absolutely catastrophic damage against unarmored foes. This is a weapon used to slay monsters and engines of war, while being a versatile battlefield tool whose wielder's enhanced strength can rip holes through barricades and bunkers. And when you think about it, it's basically like a handheld battering ram.
Right.
Lightning claws
I would assume that those would be very popular with Terminator armor users, just being able to sit there and punch through shit at will, you know?
combine the same technology and concept as a power sword, but instead take the form of a powered glove, ending in 4 razor-sharp claws extending out of each of the fingers. They can quickly make mincemeat out of anything they come into contact with, and are a rightfully feared weapon, commonly being associated with Terminator assault squads and the Chaos Space Marine unit known as Warp Talons. Although normally wielded in pairs, it's not uncommon for a single Lightning Claw to be paired with a Storm Shield or a ranged weapon. In fact, the earliest version of Lightning Claws, the Crusade pattern, was intended to be used as a single claw. The combination of a Lightning Claw and a ranged weapon gave for a greater tactical flexibility, and many Space Marines that wield them still prefer this style over dual wielding. A Crozius Arcanum is a battlefield staff or mace normally flourished with Imperial Aquila or the winged skull emblem known as the Imperialis, a skull that symbolizes the Emperor's sacrifice for humanity. This is a sacred weapon of war, and not just for its destructive capabilities, but also the symbolism that it holds. It is a staff of office for Space Marine chaplains, and within its core is a gravitic field manipulator, allowing its user to strike its target with the power of a falling comet. The Chain Fist combines the power of a Power Fist with the utility of a chainsword, as there is a chain blade attached to it like a large bayonet. The matter disruption field of the Power Fist is transferred to the chain blade as well, making it a valuable.
So I mean, there you go. That kind of answers my question a little bit. So there are kind of semi-power chained weapons, or whatever, with this chain fist or this fist chain sword kind of combo.
Tool for carving through armored bulkheads and enemy barricades. The Chain Fist is an incredibly versatile and deadly weapon, normally only wielded by Terminators. Another type of power sword is known as a Burning Blade, and the Burning Blades are actually pretty interesting, as their history states that they were originally malfunctioning power swords. This defect was turned into a strength when its makers realized that the faulty matter disruption field caused the blades of the weapon to rise in temperatures well over 600 degrees Celsius. These malfunctioning power swords were rebranded as Burning Blades, power swords that intentionally created intense heat as to burn through flesh and bone with every strike. The swords themselves utilize a large amount of heavy insulation that will keep their wielder safe from their heat, while anything else the wielder strikes will immediately burst into flames. I mentioned power scythes a little while ago, but I want to go into them in a bit more detail. You see, the power scythe was an experimental power weapon that mostly disappeared from use after the early years of the Great Crusade. Although the symbolism of the scythe can itself be a potent fear-inducing weapon, at the end of the day, a scythe is a—
Well, and that's like what a lot of weapons and things in the 40K universe are about. They're not just about being effective at killing what they're doing. They're about doing it in a way that also strikes fear into the enemies and breaks their morale. So that's why chain, weapons are utilized so much. The fact that they're made from that, mononuclear whatever, I forget what the material is called, but it's a material that's so sharp that can cut through essentially anything. But the fact that it can cut through anything while also, essentially ripping them apart at the same time and having viscera spray everywhere, the side of that is going to be pretty morale breaking, especially when you see it coming from a group of Astartes. So, I mean, that's what most of these weapons are about. They're about not just doing what they're intended to do well, but also to break morale.
A clumsy and awkward thing to wield. Because of this, most Space Marine legions quickly determined that there was no point to use them over a more refined power axe or sword. Despite this, the power scythe would remain quite popular with certain legions such as the Death Guard. The power scythe does have a few advantages over other power weapons, namely its reach, and the fact that it can cut down many human-sized targets in a single swing. Additionally, its bizarre shape makes it ideal for striking past an enemy's guard.
Right,
and because of
it would be difficult to kind of necessarily really fight against, or at least awkward to fight against, because it'd be something that wouldn't be utilized as much, and you're not used to fighting against it. You know, whereas someone who's proficient in that has probably fought against someone who uses a sword or an axe or whatever on a regular basis, so they would have developed ways to get around and their guard and fight them. So, but again, that also goes to why I would think that, you know, the kind of halberds that the custodians use would be something that would be utilized more often, because like you said, it would give it, you know, it provides reach, while also combining, you know, a ranged weapon in there as well. But I don't know. Like I said, I don't know why it's something that only custodians can use. I don't know if it's just a tradition thing, if it's literally just a skill issue. You know, they just, you know, I don't know why. I haven't gotten that far. So like I said, in the comments, if anyone knows, let me know.
The esoteric fighting style needed to wield such a weapon properly. This can often catch many opponents off guard in battles where a single mistake can mean an immediate and gruesome death. Throughout the Imperium, there are a lot of different types of power spears and power lances, and other such bladed weapons mounted on the ends of long shafts. The power lance is favored by the White Star chapters of Space Marines in particular, as when its wielder is mounted on a bike, the weapon can be wielded one-handed. The combination of these two things can result in absolutely catastrophic damage when charging into hordes of enemies. Although the power lance is incredibly effective in cavalry-style combat, in hand-to-hand fights they can prove to be rather unwieldy. And although
that's just with lances in general. Like, you know, that's why lances, you never really see them used in anything except for cavalry charges back in the day.
They have an extended reach. If the enemy is able to close the gap, then the wielder may be in trouble. Another type of spear-like weapon is known as the Guardian Spear, which is used exclusively by the Adeptus Custodes. It is a halberd-like power weapon that is said to be so heavy that it takes upwards of 10 normal men just to lift it. This is an
So, I mean, that answers the question somewhat, that it's just a strength issue, but you would still think they'd be able to make a variant for Astartes, right? But again, could just be a cost-effective type of situation with power weapons being so expensive to create.
Artisanal power weapon of inconceivable worth, and in the skilled hands of a custodian is an incredibly deadly weapon. The halberd itself incorporates a ranged weapon at its tip, making them effective at every range. Now, when it comes to Xenos and Chaos forces, many of them utilize power weapons much like the Imperium of Man does, most of these taking similar shapes like spears, swords, and axes. However, there are a couple of power weapons that are wholly unique to these other factions. One such weapon is known as the Orc Power Claw, which, although similar in design to a power fist, utilizes multiple clawed fingers to create a pincer-like attack. When activated, all of the claws snap together immediately, like that of a mechanized crab claw, that can cut just about anything in half with a single strike. The power weapons of the 41st millennium are incredibly rare and potent melee weapons. The massive amount of knowledge and skill required to make them will ensure their rarity into the future. With every year that passes, more and more of these power weapons are destroyed or lost on the battlefield, thus increasing their rarity even further. Perhaps in the future, somebody like Belisarius Cawl may come up with a way of creating them en masse. In such a hypothetical scenario,
he seems to be the one that figures out everything in the universe, so wouldn't surprise me.
Cawl may come up with a way of creating them en masse. In such a hypothetical scenario, they may end up replacing chain weapons as the primary melee weapon of the Space Marines. However, a far more likely scenario is that eventually there will only be a handful left in the galaxy. But at the present moment in time, they remain a terrifying weapon that strikes fear into the hearts of all those that would have to face them in battle.
I mean, all I have to do really is find an STC that tells them how to properly create power weapons, and that, you know, problem could be solved. So.
But what is your favorite power weapon? Are you more of a sword, axe, or spear kind of person? Or do you prefer the raw power of a thunderhammer over bladed weapons? I know they're kind of edgy and impractical, but personally, I think the power scythe is always going to be my favorite. What other weapons from the 40K universe would you like to see me cover on this channel? Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Once again, a big thank you to my patrons that continue to support the work that I do. And if you'd like to get your name here in the credits, then click on the link to my Patreon page down in the description, and consider making a pledge today. Thanks again for hanging out with me today. And if you didn't know, I live in Florida, so I have a big-ass hurricane I have to go prepare for, which by the time you're watching this may have already hit. So wish me the best of luck, and I'll catch y'all.
When was this made? A year ago? Oh, okay. I don't remember what hurricane was coming through a year ago because I live down in Florida as well. But anyway, regardless of any of that, that was Wes Hammer. Like I said, links are down below in the description for his original video without my commentary and reaction, and to his channel. So go over there and do check out his stuff. Give this video his like if you enjoyed it. Check out his content. Give him a sub. He makes a lot of great Warhammer stuff. I think, like I'd said, if I had to choose one of the Custodes like powered halberds with you know, the ranged bolt gun, I think it might be a bolt gun or might be just another powered weapon, but the combination of it being kind of a ranged rifle and a halberd spear, you know, that would be my choice if I had to pick one. But I mean, like I said, man, in Darktide, nothing beats the Thunderhammer, man. Nothing beats, you know, just bopping people with the Thunderhammer. It's so satisfying. It's so satisfying just one hitting even like all these the big baddies with it, man. I love it. So it would probably be between those two if I had to choose. You know what I'm saying? So, but yeah, appreciate you guys hanging out and watching the video. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, consider leaving a like and a sub. Like I said earlier, there is a join button somewhere down below. A lot of times I do these reactions live with my YouTube members, so if you would like to join in a lot of discussions that we have, feel free, click the join button down there, take a look at any of the YouTube tiers and see if any of that has any kind of interest to you. Regardless, I just appreciate you guys coming in, hanging out, watching the video here, chilling with me. And yeah, just hope you're having yourselves a wonderful day. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next one.